Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
A cordial debate between these two men. I wouldn't describe them as evenly matched because they are so different. So different in style and so different on substance. Very interested to hear from the spin room, to hear from all of my colleagues here, to get to all of the analysis that we're going to get to. I think the big picture takeaway from this is that one of these candidates is much slicker than the other, is a much more practiced kind of professional debate style speaker, and the other candidate won. There was one bad moment for Tim Walz in this debate where he got mixed up and embarrassed in answering a question about exactly what month he had been in China in relation to the Tiananmen Square protest. But then on guns, on January 6th, on Obamacare, on the economy, on blaming everything on the border, back again on healthcare, on abortion, on every issue on substance, JD Vance was very polished and very slick, and Tim Walz beat him on all the substantive points.
Okay, yeah, nobody thinks that. There's, can you explain something for me, ladies and gentlemen? Tim Walz has been in politics for a couple decades now. Tim Walz was in Congress. And when he ran for Congress, he debated. Tim Walz is a two-term governor, and when he ran for governor, he debated. How is it that JD Vance, who is the newcomer with no experience, and that is the number one reason why he is unqualified to be vice president, according to every Democrat, how does JD Vance have more debate experience than Tim Walz? You ever notice that that's the whole line that they have been saying over the past 24 hours, is that JD Vance is clearly the more experienced and polished debater. How? He's new here. Tim Walz has been around for a while. How is JD Vance the more experienced debater? Just asking. It's, how is it that the new guy that I just responded to, who is that turd who used to be a Republican and now he pretends he's not? Bill Kristol. Yeah, Bill Kristol, that guy. He's like, JD Vance has no experience. That's why he's unqualified. And I'm like, oh, well, if your sole reason for supporting somebody would be experience, then clearly you'll be supporting Trump, right? Because he has way more than Kamala Harris has. So I didn't get a response to that one. It was kind of weird. I don't know why. I'm still waiting on that. But how is it that JD Vance, who is the inexperienced noob in Washington, D.C., and is totally unqualified because he doesn't know what he's doing, he just got there, for crying out loud, how is he more experienced than Tim Walz, who's been around for a couple of decades? How's that? Oh, that's right. They're lying. Yes, they're lying. They are completely and totally lying. Now, one, Tim Walz was completely wrong on the facts. We'll get to that in a little bit. But also, it isn't about the facts. And you don't win a debate by being right. Okay? If you win a debate by being right, Donald Trump walloped Kamala Harris. At best, draw. A lot of people have Harris winning that one by slim majority, but not enough to actually convert anybody because everything she said was a lie. A demonstrable, provable lie that has been fact-checked by every fact-checking service, including the left-wing fact-checking services, and they all said it was a lie. And she still was anointed as the winner. But that's weird. Rachel Maddow just told everybody that if you tell the truth, you win. Now, that's not how debates work. That's not at all how the debates work. Let's just go ahead and let's give it to somebody else. Let's talk about Brit Hume. Brit Hume is always an interesting reaction to these sorts of things. Let's cue this up. Here's Brit Hume from Fox News talking a little bit about the moderators.
Well, the moderators were obnoxious and made it feel like 3-on-1 on Vance, and Vance was just fine. He seems to have been, his skills as a debater and a speaker seem to have been honed to some extent by just these several months on the campaign trail. And for one so young, he seemed, in terms of his knowledge of policy, to run rings around poor Governor Walz.
And he did. Now, okay, Brit Hume, one of the most experienced guys in the entire business. That's why they only bring him in for special occasions. And Brit Hume is the guy that pointed out, hey, this guy's new. He's young. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He just got to Capitol Hill. It's the number one knock on JD Vance is that he has only been there for a very short period of time. He doesn't have any experience. Okay, well, then suddenly he's the more experienced debater. I have heard like 18 people say that since last night. And I still keep asking the question, how is the new guy the more experienced master debater if, I know you're waiting for it. I know you're all waiting for it. If he's the new guy, how is the new guy a better master debater than the guy who's been around for a couple of decades? How is that? The answer to that is Tim Walz is dumb. Tim Walz is out there lying to everybody. Tim Walz is the guy that's been caught red-handed lying multiple times, and he can't stop lying. You realize you're heading into this debate, and Tim Walz is already going to have to volley back the amount of balls that the master debater, JD Vance, is going to be throwing at his face because he'd been caught lying so much? What happens right before the debate? What happens the afternoon before? Oh, Tim Walz got caught lying again. I told you it was going to come up. I told you it was going to come up, and it ended up being one of the best sound bites. All right, so other than MSNBC, who is clearly out of their dang minds, and Brit Hume, who is sane, what did CNN say? Cue the audio. Let's just go ahead and listen in on CNN.
Lose track, I think, even in the civility of the fact that JD Vance came to this debate to land a bunch of punches, and he did. He landed a lot of punches in between all the niceties and all of that. And the thing that really stood out to me was that Tim Walz did not seem prepared for it.
Oh, my gosh. The live chat is telling me that our old friend Pete Buttigieg helped prepare Tim Walz for this debate. Democrats, I'm just going to keep letting you believe that Pete Buttigieg is a really smart guy and is very, very good at this. I'm just going to keep letting you believe that because holy moly. I was sitting there and I'm like, why is Pete Buttigieg really invested in defending everything that Tim Walz says? Because he was just posting like nonstop. It's not like him. And well, now that makes sense because Tim Walz is saying everything that Pete Buttigieg said, and it was falling flat. So Pete had to provide some context. Pete is not great at debating at all. Never has been, by the way. So I don't know why he would be the guy that they picked. I don't know. Jonathan Karl, this is the guy from ABC who fabricated and made up the Trump wants you to inject bleach to kill COVID. It's not a real thing, never happened. No, this is what anti-Trumper, far-left activist Jonathan Karl had to say.
But first, David, I got to say, I think that Walz did seem unsteady. And frankly, what I saw in Walz is somebody who has not faced questions on a national stage since he became the Democratic nominee. He was simply out of practice. I mean, I don't know why they've done it, but they've kept him out of the limelight. They've kept him away from reporters. They haven't had him do any interviews. And he was clearly unsteady through much of that debate. And
gee, I wonder why. Could it be the moment he was announced as Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, we found out he lied about his entire life story? And then he didn't want to answer any questions about it? Could maybe that have something to do with it? Possibly. Could be. Most likely. But Jonathan Karl does have a valid point here. You take Tim Walz. Yeah, guy's an experienced representative in Congress. Yep, guy's a two-term governor of the state of Minnesota. Yeah, guy's been around in politics for a couple of decades. Very experienced liar in fabricating his own narrative and life story. He's been caught red-handed doing that numerous times, and you probably should have put the guy in front of the press and let the press, ask him some basic rudimentary questions before you stuck him on stage with JD Vance, whom, Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, did or did I not tell Trump supporters, relax, JD Vance is going to be a great pick because he's going to be able to handle the press. Yeah, he's a killer. I mean, not literally, a figurative killer when it comes to the news media. That's what JD Vance does. And so you put the more experienced politician up there who has had more debate hours, more time in the hot seat, all of the debates that he had on the floor of the House of Representatives. That's another thing. It's not just the debates in the election. You realize that Tim Walz has been debating in committees and the floor of the House of Representatives and all of that stuff? Like, he's been debating for years. And he walked right in to a rookie master debater, JD Vance. And he got, well, killed is what he did. He got killed. It was not a pleasant experience for Democrats at all. But the cope on MSNBC was kind of humorous. We're not done yet. There's some good stuff. And we have to play the funny sound bites. I mean, the funny sound bites are good. Usually debates are pretty boring. Yeah, there were some pretty funny moments. So we got to play some of those. Hey, got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. I may have prepared just a little ditty of a special during the commercial breaks, one of them anyway, for all of the people in the live stream on Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. When I get to the news breaks, I tend to play some videos for you guys if I don't sit there and answer questions. You know, sometimes you got to go to the potty and everything else, but it may involve some of the best memes from last night. Some of the other stuff that I think that we have to appreciate here is it's not just CNN and ABC and pretty much everybody else who was out there telling you that, Walz got shellacked. And maybe that whole thing with Walz running around and saying, listen, I'm not very good at debating, maybe that wasn't a ploy. I don't know. Maybe it was, and it still ended up bad. Well, the New York Times, Vance's dominant debate performance shows why he's Trump's running mate. Well, yep, it's the New York Times. So, I mean, we can keep running through this, but you're essentially getting the gist of it. I think some of the funny comments from Obama and Pelosi are about to replace Walz. Kamala Harris introduces her new running mate tomorrow, and it's Joe Biden. That's good stuff right there. I don't care who you are. So, David Axelrod is like, here's the thing. Vice presidents don't make policy. Presidents do. Who talks about the Pence years? Yeah. So why do we even have vice presidential debates, and why were you hyping it, Dingleberry? It only doesn't matter. It only doesn't matter if your guy loses, right? For one, I honestly don't know why we have vice presidential debates. I do think they are largely a waste of time. But they do happen, and nonetheless, it's something that we gotta address. So there were some good moments. I mean, some really interesting moments. And, ladies and gentlemen, I think when you have Tim Walz, Tim Walz is like, I'm not going to go to the spin room. You heard everybody on MSNBC like, we'll just have to see what the spin room says about this. Well, Tim Walz noped out of that thing. I mean, he got out of there. He's like, I'm not going to no spin room. You crazy? There's no way I'm going to go to no spin room. That ain't going to happen. I want to play you a longer clip because I think it's important that you get the full context of this, because this is a moment where Tim Walz is caught lying red-handed again to all of you. And if he'll lie about this stuff, he'll lie about anything. And that's really the crux of it. Yeah, politicians lie. Absolutely, politicians lie. But when you lie about this stuff, and it's something. And by the way, when Tim Walz lies, and this is the shameful thing too, it's less embarrassing and shameful that Tim Walz lies. It's more so that he lies so much that I actually give you bad information because I have to pass on the lie to all of you, thinking that, it's the truth, but in fact, it was a lie. Tim Walz didn't go to China 30 times, Morgan. So we gave everybody fake news yesterday. Tim Walz got caught lying about that. He only went around 15 times. He didn't go around 30 times. So I want you to listen to this. This is a moment in the debate. It's almost 3 minutes, and I'm going to let this thing run because I think that you need to hear this.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family.
Hold on. Morgan, help me out. I don't have my show prep from yesterday. Didn't I make the point yesterday that you can't confuse Nebraska for China? I made that point. Like, I feel like I did that pretty strongly. Like, I was sarcastic enough that people probably got it, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. All right. I'm just so hey, you weren't there for Tiananmen Square. I like how Rachel Maddow just kind of excused that. Oh, there's like some discrepancy about what month he was in China. No, the dude literally made that a part of his life story, that he was there for Tiananmen Square. And that he had the reaction of what happened with Tiananmen Square and the visceral anger that he had from other Europeans because he was willing to go to Tiananmen Square. Remember that? Like, that was a part of his life story, guys. And he wasn't there. It was just the latest lie that he made up. He wasn't there during Tiananmen Square. He was there many months later. He went to Hong Kong. And he talks about, he's asked, like, hey, can you, like, provide an answer for that discrepancy? Like, what's the deal? I rode bicycles in Nebraska, and I'm proud of that service. You caught that last part, right? Him saying I was proud of that. You did? Okay, Morgan caught it. You guys catch it? I'm proud of that service. Dang. All right, I'm gonna let him go.
Farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China.
Manuals,
the issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am.
Yeah, they
saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people.
It's always been about that. It's always been about you being a knucklehead? You said you were there during Tiananmen Square. You were not. And you got caught lying. Again. Got the knucklehead part right. Probably killed the campaign with that line. More coming up. You're listening to The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I mean, townhall.com, they posted at 9:05. The debate started, 9? I think our coverage started at 9, right? 9:05. Tim Walz is off to a rough start. Why does he look so scared? And he did. Like, he had the weird, like, wide eye thing happening. He did look very scared the entire night. Tim Walz looked... I don't know if it was a conscious effort, like, hey, you're always scowling and stuff. So, because, I mean, we meme that all the time. He's always got like a scowl and an angry look on his face, unless he's doing the jazz hands thing. And so I'm wondering if, I don't know, Pete Buttigieg was like, your eyes are so pretty. Why don't you just open them up a little bit and it'll soften your look with the voters? And then he did, and he looked just petrified the entire night. Tim Walz did not look like a battle-hardened combat veteran who served multiple tours in Afghanistan. He didn't look like an international spy smuggling nuclear secrets to China. He didn't look like a football coach. He didn't look like an experienced politician, even though he is one. He looked scared, is what he did. And this is kind of how things started. Cue the audio, please, Morgan. This is how things started for old Tim Walz. Listen to this.
October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, not off to a great start. He only had one mistake, though, guys, according to Rachel Maddow. Okay, then the knucklehead thing, right? So let's just...
And I'm a knucklehead at times.
Yeah.
And I'm a knucklehead at times.
Yeah, like we need to put that on the soundboard. I'm a knucklehead at times, right? Then this one happened. And this one, he even got hit by the news media on Today. So he's going to have a rough time with this one.
So I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA...
Excuse me?
So I've become friends with school shooters.
Ouch. Ouch. Now, that's not what he meant to say. But it's what he said. After he confused Israel with Iran and called himself a knucklehead and got caught lying. I mean, that's how the day started for the guy. And he did. He looked petrified and he looked scared and he looked... Well, he did not look like the man's man that we're told Kamala Harris picked him to be her running mate because he was. Remember that? He's a man's man. Look at him take his air filter off of his old pickup truck and then put the air filter back on, having not done anything to it other than unscrewed one butterfly nut. Look at that man's man. Yeah. He did not give off man's man vibes last night. There are a lot of, we'll just call them savage conservative women on social media. I don't know if you have ever experienced this, but women who are conservative, they are savage on social media. And the amount of women who may have memed and expressed that there was a vast drought amongst their ranks after watching Tim Walz flail, perform, I don't know, was ridiculous. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was, unlike them, it was it was ridiculous. It was brutal, to say the least. Absolutely brutal. And Tim Walz breaking the fourth wall with that nice little look, the side eye to you, and saying, hey, guys, I think we got him. You know, for the most part, it was a polite debate. But, it starts off with him getting caught in the Tiananmen Square lie. Then you've got the Washington Free Beacon, Elena Goodman, vice presidential candidate. Tim Walz was so proud of his extensive experience traveling to China that he occasionally used to exaggerate it by claiming to have visited the communist country twice as often as he actually did, according to Minnesota Public Radio. Oof. Walz went on around 15 trips to China in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Not the 30 that I told you yesterday, because Tim Walz lied to me too. I'm sorry that Tim Walz deceived me. I should have known better. That's rough. That's coming from public radio. Ugh. The news comes as the House Oversight Committee has been investigating Walz's travel to China and whether he was the target of foreign influence operations. Walz first visited China on a year-long teaching fellowship in 1989. After he returned to the United States, he set up a travel company to take American students on tours of China. Walz claimed in 2016 that he had traveled to the communist country about 30 times and said that during congressional hearings that he had visited dozens of times. Now, I can forgive the dozens, I guess, maybe. But he got real specific about when he was there. I was there during Tiananmen Square, except he wasn't. Kind of like he said he was there during certain Afghanistan operations when he wasn't. And kind of like he said that he was there for certain deployments, except he wasn't. It's almost like there's a pattern of behavior here. Minnesota Public Radio's APM reports said that Walz sometimes exaggerated his already substantial experience in China. Yeah, why? Why? What's the point of exaggerating? Dude, you went to China 15 or so times. That's more than Well, anybody who's ever escaped China went back to China. So I don't know why you would ever want to exaggerate that. But nonetheless, that's what happened. Something else kind of weird happened as well. And I don't know. Let me see if this kind of pokes you guys in the same way that it pokes me. Vice President Kamala Harris recounted how she lost sleep after former Vice President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 race, particularly when she chose Tim Walz as her running mate. Quote, "Look, from the time that Joe Biden called me and told me he wasn't running, I mean, it just, like everything, was in speedy motion, and I was not sleeping so well." That's what she said Tuesday in an interview with All the Smoke podcast. Okay, Harris's comments on her sleep deprivation came after Barnes asked how she decided to ask Walz to join her on the ticket. She confirmed that she hadn't been sleeping well on the day that she picked him. Quote, "I guess that the process was ultimately, I made a decision about my gut." I mean, even when she gives an interview on a podcast, she doesn't sound coherent at all. She recalled how she said that Walz and her shared a similar experience about, quote, seeing people. According to the New York Post, the first reported on the Harris comments about her insomnia after the podcast. Yeah, Walz and I have a passion for seeing people. I have a passion for seeing people too, but I also have a passion for seeing things because I like vision. Not meaning to shame the blind out there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just happy that, I have that ability. Harris also shared that when Biden finally dropped out, she began cooking early in the morning while her family slept because she could not sleep. That one morning, I'm quoting, by the way. I want you to understand, I'm not adding this. That one morning, I had, I don't know, a few hours sleep. And I like to sleep. Oh boy. I just got up. I was like, and so I just went out and got a pork roast and started marinating it, she said. Okay. Everything that happened to Tim Walz yesterday, not that important. The nominee for the Democratic Party telling you that she loses sleep over running a campaign and picking her running mate, and that it distresses her so much that she becomes sleep deprived and wakes up early in the morning to cook a roast because it gets to her so badly, is not exactly the look you want for the next commander-in-chief, is it? How did we go from who's going to answer the call at 3 a.m. to I'm so nervous, I marinated a roast at 4 in the morning? How do we get to that? Do you want somebody who loses sleep over this? Some of you might be like, hey, that's kind of normal. I don't think Donald Trump loses sleep over campaigning. I don't think that Barack Obama lost sleep over campaigning. I know for a fact that Bill Clinton didn't. George W. Bush probably didn't either. I don't know. It seems like if running a political campaign causes you to lose sleep, and next thing you know, you're like, why did you pick Tim Walz as your guy? I was sleep deprived and marinating a roast. I hadn't been sleeping at all. Oh. So you make bad decisions because you're sleep deprived, because you're stressed out. You do realize the memes that are going to happen as a result of this when it gets out. And you women are going to say it's sexist, but it ain't no guy who said it. It's Kamala Harris who said it. Folks, this is not a good look. Everything that happened to Tim Walz yesterday, well deserved. But ultimately, the worst thing to happen to the Democrats in the past 24 hours is Kamala Harris saying, when Joe Biden told me he was dropping out, I got stressed, I lost sleep, I couldn't go to bed, I couldn't stay in bed, and I had to cook to calm my nerves. Not a good look for somebody who wants to be the leader of the free world. Got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. I want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. Go to rbcarcompany.com. Listen, you give me an hour. Okay, we only got 6 more minutes. You give this to me, and I am largely going to leave you alone about this debate. Okay, but I know everybody's talking about it. I know it's going to be a whole thing, but isn't it a bizarre thing for somebody to go out there and when they're asked very specifically, like, how did you arrive at the decision for Tim Walz? Remember, the campaign had previously said the reason they picked him is he was a man's man. And then he runs around doing the weird jazz hands thing and looked scared to death last night. But the answer is, I was sleep deprived, which, okay, you make bad decisions when you're sleep deprived. That's not great. But then why are you sleep deprived? Well, because I was now the top of the ticket, and that scared me. That's bad. Funniest meme about that, I think, was the one out there that said that Kamala Harris announces new running mate, and she's holding up Joe Biden's hand. Joe Biden's all back in it. Yeah, that's some pretty good stuff. There's some fact checking out there, and yeah, naturally, Tim Walz didn't do very good. Anybody who knows the issues knows that Tim Walz is not doing very good. You can look at the crime data. He lied about that. The missing migrant children, solar panels, Project 2025. JD Vance did not have a great answer on firearms. I think he fumbled that one. So people are asking me about that. Nobody's perfect. He did not have a flawless night. But, if this were a closer debate, that might have been the issue that lost JD Vance. It didn't. JD Vance lost that one. Anti-gun activists are running with it today. But overall, I mean, it was a shellacking. It was an absolute beating. He lied about the border crossings being down. The viral moment of JD Vance fact-checking the moderators for trying to fact-check him. The moderators are wrong, and it's wordplay. It's like saying crime is down. Well, crime isn't down. The crimes are still being committed. It's just that they're not being logged anymore by the FBI. They're being logged by the CDC. Remember when we did that a couple of days ago? You know what the CDC says? Since 2019, murders have gone up over 11.2%. That's what the CDC says. Now, if you're not aware, the FBI doesn't log death certificates. The CDC does. So the CDC's numbers are going to be more accurate there. And they're pretty clear. Murder's gone up. If you go around the country, you can clearly see that violent crime has gone up. Theft has gone up. It's not up for debate, ladies and gentlemen. Pete Buttigieg, Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, whoever else, they can all lie about that all they want. At one point, Tim Walz says the insurance markets would collapse without Obamacare's individual mandate. How would they collapse without the individual mandate, which forces you to pay for insurance whether you want it or not? Why? I know some of you are answering this question right now. Stop wasting your time. The individual mandate was gotten rid of about 7 years ago. So how is it that they would collapse without the individual mandate if it hasn't been around for 7 years? That's a simple question, could be asked. But I digress. And remember the battle, too, the huge battle. Democrats did not want the individual mandate to go away. Republicans fought for that one. It was the one thing, the one victory that was achieved on Obamacare when Republicans were in control. So it was not a good night for Tim Walz. The only person who seems to think so, 2 people, but I guess together, the only equal one person is Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow. They're the only ones, and they're faking it. We all know that they're faking it. Oh, that reminds me. You know what? I think the next segment might be a really good time to tell you how much these female cable news anchors make. We'll talk about that next.
Podcasts by Federated Media.